Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Hello, if you're new here, my name is bruhnnoli, also known as Brian, and I just am some dude that likes to sew up some geeky things. Today, I'm going to be sewing up some Minecraft cargo pants. This idea sort of is an echo off of something I recently made. In one of my previous videos, I made some Minecraft grass block shorts. And initially those shorts were supposed to be pants, but I decided to make them shorts instead because I wanted them to be like proportionally similar to like a Minecraft block and like look like the Minecraft grass block. So I decided to turn those just into shorts, but afterward I was kind of like, okay, this is cool and all, but I still also want Minecraft pants, like hello. So I was kind of thinking of ways I can make pants that are kind of different than just the sort of using that dirt texture again. I was thinking like, okay, like let's play around with different textures. So I was kind of like, wait, what about the stone texture? Like, what if that was pants? And then that kind of snowballed into a bunch of other ideas. Sort of thinking like, okay, stone, you know, in Minecraft we go mining for resources and we're surrounded by stone, so we're looking for, you know, there's ore. And then, okay, let's use the ore textures. Oh, those could be fun pockets. Okay, yeah. So basically these pants, I initially designed them to be symmetrical and just sort of have the ores as the pockets. But I just wanted to have more fun with it because it just felt a little too basic. As I was drafting the pattern for these, I was kind of like, let's make this more fun. So I kind of decided to go for a more asymmetric look. That way I could fit more ores around the pants. And on the pants as well, I wanted the ore pockets to sort of, from top to bottom, go down in the order that you would find them on the Y level on the Minecraft like chunk base. So like on the surface we have like coal and iron, and then it sort of trickles down into the more rarer stronger resources. Yeah, I just wanted to like sort of also throw on a bunch of patches and stuff for the funsies, because why not? Oh, yeah. So with all of that covered, let's look at the sample. And voila, here are the pants. So here we are looking at a little diamond pickaxe patch, which is going to be under this emerald block and next to the diamond block. And you'll also notice that I have these vinyl cutouts, which are sort of corresponding with what's going to be the ore pockets. I just thought it'd be a nice touch to sort of incorporate the resource with what ore it comes from. And you also notice I have a diamond sword patch at the top, but here on the back we got the coal and the iron next to the gold on the front. And you'll think it's a patch, but no, surprise, it is a fully functional pocket. Yeah, so then trickling down, it went to lapis, redstone, and then emerald and diamond, which maybe aren't technically correct in terms of the Y level, but I just thought they made sense together because they're gems. I don't know. Compared to the other side, the redstone side seemed a little bare, so I might add some more stuff to that. And I did incorporate a little creeper face because I thought it'd be cute. I'm pretty satisfied with how these came out. There's some reworking I had to do with the pattern itself. There were just some problem areas with where the waist was hitting the top of the pants, but yeah. Now let's get into all of the materials I'm going to be using for this project. So starting off with the fabric, we have this cotton twill digitally printed fabric from Spoonflower. I'm going to be using this for the base of the pant, so anything along the base. And then for all the square pockets, we have another digitally printed fabric, which is all the different Minecraft ores. I believe 1 yard of this for the pockets, and 3 yards I got for the stone texture. And then for the thread that we're going to be using, I'm going to be using a ton of different threads. With each pocket, I wanted to do the color of the ore for like the top stitching thread around the edge. And for the top stitching on the base of the pant, I'm gonna be using a dark gray thread. So we have this huge collection right here, all different colors, corresponding with each different oar. And then other mixed materials we have button, a 7-inch zipper for the fly, and then I also got this printable heat transfer vinyl that I'm going to be using for all of the different decals of the different resources that correspond with the oars. And we also have heat transfer smart vinyl that I might be using for some lettering, for some words like here on this t-shirt. And I also have some embroidered motifs going all over the pants. For that, I have this craft fuse that I like to use as a backing. You can also use like stitch and tear. There's washable backing for embroidery as well. This is just kind of what I had laying around, so I'm using this. So, no pun intended, before I can start sewing, I essentially need to prep everything, such as the fabric. So I do that by ironing down everything to make it nice and clean before I cut out my patterns. And then I also change the thread on the serger to match the fabric. So I'm doing gray because it's stone, so I want to match the stone. But then I go ahead and I lay out my nice ironed and pressed fabric down, and I also put my little wolf plush because the fabric was so heavy that I was just kind of sliding off the table, so I wanted some more support. So I used my little wolf plush, and then I lined up my patterns with the pattern of the stone texture. So I made little markings in my pattern to specifically line up, and I just made little tick marks in my pattern so I knew where to line them up to. So I cut out one pattern and one leg out at a time to make sure that I had enough fabric to work with and to make sure that they were lined up nicely and correctly, especially when working with flat textures or patterns. You want to make sure that they line up correctly. And because this is like a pixelated grid texture, I sort of had to be very cautious of that. So I made sure that when I was cutting out my panel that was going over my front pant pattern, I made sure to line it up exactly in the right spot where it was on the pant pattern. And then I'm also using this pattern piece of this panel as a guide, more so. I'm trying to follow the fabric and the grain line itself, and then I'm sort of sketching out where I want the pattern to lay, and then I'm cutting it out. And then I went ahead and I cut out all of the oar patterns and I serged them all up to make them nice and clean on the inside. And then I serged up all of my pattern pieces, and I only serged up the edges that were going to be open on the inside of the garment. Anything that was sewn into another part of the garment is just left unserged. But we do the serging to make the edges nice and clean and keep them from fraying. So I did that on all of the insides of all the patterns of the pockets, as well as the inseam, and areas like that. So I went ahead and I cut out all my pattern pieces and I serged them in the places they need to be serged. So now we can start building up the pants. So these pants have a lot going on. So I'm gonna break this down and we're gonna work little by little. So we have to sort of think of these pants as a bunch of layers together. So we have the base of the pant, and then we have the big pockets, which also have other pockets on top of them. So we're kind of going to be working from the top down and around. So we have to sew these pockets to this pocket, and then we can sew them onto the pants. And then we can sew even more pockets on top of those pockets.
What?
This big pocket right here has a little embroidered design right here. So we have to worry about this first because the embroidery needs to be completely flat for us to put it on. And so once the embroidery is done, then we can worry about the other sewing stuff. So let's do this guy. Okay, so to get started on the embroidery, what I need to do is map out where the motif is going to go on the pattern. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is measuring out the seam allowance and where the stitch work is going to be on the shorts, just to make sure that the motif is staying clear of those areas. Measuring that out, we have 2.5 inches from this point, and we have about 1.5 inches down from this side. So I'm just going to be putting a pin where the stitch work is going to end. So just show me where I cannot have the embroidery going. So using these 2 pins as the markers, I'm just going to measure out where the motif can go. The motif is about 2 inches big, so I'm going to be using this point as my marker. And I'm also trying to be cautious of the grain line, so I'm kind of angling my ruler here to make sure that it goes along with the grain line. And so here we have it marked. When doing machine embroidery, you usually want to use a backing to keep your surface nice and flat and secure for the embroidery to go nice and smoothly across. So I'm going to be using this craft fuse. I like to use stitch and tear most of the time, but I've kind of run low. And I'm using craft fuse specifically also because this design is not going to match up that great on the hoop. You still can technically run it, but it probably won't end well. So for the craft fuse, I'm going to cut it out in the shape of the embroidery hoop. That way I can also fuse it to the back of this pattern and extend it so that the hoop has more to grab, as well as giving it a nice stable backing for the embroidery. Okay, so we're at the embroidery machine, so all I need to do is put the hoop in the machine. I have to select the design, and then I have to run the design and change the threads as needed. So this motif has 5 different colors. So we have the light tone, the medium tone, and the dark tone for the diamond sword. And then we also have the 2 light and dark tones for the handle of the sword, the little stick part. And yeah. So for the embroidery, I essentially just plug in the hoop and then I let the machine run. I essentially just need to change the thread each time a new color is presented. And yeah, for the bobbin, I ended up using like a blue to sort of match the design in case any threads from the underneath popped up. But yeah, here's how it came out. I also made this design in a program called Inkscape using an extension called Ink Stitch, which allows you to make your own embroidered designs. Using a USB port, I upload the design into my embroidery machine and it reads it. But yeah, so here I'm sort of just tearing out the backing and our embroidery is donezo. Now with the embroidery done, now we get to work on these big pocket patterns on the front of the pants. So on my sample, I essentially just folded in the seam allowance and snipped the corner and just folded it down for the edge of the pocket. But that can lead to fraying in the corner, so in order to prevent that, I made these pocket facings that I'm going to sew to the top of the pockets, and then I'm going to flip it inside out so that it will leave the edge nice and clean and there won't be any fraying that shows. Here I am grabbing the facing and lining it up with the front of the pants, and then I gave myself a 1/2 inch of seam allowance, which is generally what I give myself for my standard seams, I guess. So I just sew it over and then I cut the corners to release the fabric so that it lays nice and flat on the outside. So I flip it over and then I lay it flat and give it a nice good press. So now that these are all pressed and flat, I'm going to sew a decorative top stitch right around the edge here, which will also help keep the back of the pocket in place so that it won't pop up and peek through from the front. So I'm gonna do a double stitch. That's just because I like how it looks personally. So I'm gonna do a 3/8 stitch around the edge, followed by a 1/8 stitch around the edge as well. And for the top stitching detail, I'm actually going to be doubling up on the thread because I think the singular thread just is a little too dainty, and I like how the bulkiness of the double thread will look. So I'm gonna be doing that. And to do that, I have one thread threaded up here on the machine, and I can also put another thread down here, and I just can grab both of the threads and I can loop them and thread them together as one, and the machine will catch both of them and treat it as one singular thread. And in order to get nice, clean, straight lines while I'm sewing, I'm going to be following this line right here for the outer 3/8 inch top stitch, and this line right here for the 1/8 inch top stitch. So the top stitching is done around the edge, but I also need to get this side done as well. So we're looking at this part of the pants. So I basically made it this cube shaped because I wanted to mimic like the natural world generation in Minecraft. Granted, like being on the surface, roaming around, or in caves, how it's kind of this circular shape, but the cubes make it like, I don't know. Yeah, I just kind of wanted like a cube motif going on here. Granted, it's Minecraft. So in order to get this squared out shape, I have to sort of do some playing around here. So looking at the pattern here, basically we have this cube shape, and these are going to be folded in and then stitched down around the edge, but we have these here as well. I'll need to snip the corners here in order for us to fully get a good fold in there. So I'm essentially going to be cutting to the corner of where I'm going to be folding, and I tried my best to match up the pattern so that I just had to fold along the lines here. So with this cut, I can now have easier access to get a good fold in like there. So then it'll be stitched down. So I'm going to fold in this entire pattern piece, and then I'm going to iron it. So now that everything is ironed out, I'm going to be doing a 3-inch stitch along the edge here just to secure down the seam allowance. And then later on, I'm going to be doing a 1/8 inch stitch, but I'll only be doing that one when we sew it to the pant. But for now, I'm just doing the 3/8 inch stitch. Okay, so now that these pieces are all sewn around the edges, now I can move on to the pocket bags that are going to be going on top of these parts. So this part right here and this part right here. So with this part, I'm going to be folding down the edges on each side of the pocket, and then I'm going to sew 3/4 on each side, and then on the top of the pocket, I'm going to sew an extra 1/4 because that's going to be the opening, so that's just going to finish the top part. And then when I sew it to this pattern piece right here, I'm going to sew around on the 1/8 stitch on the edge. And again, that's all just personal preference. You don't have to do the ace and the 3/8 stitch specifically. I'm just doing that because that's my preference, but you can do any distance from the edge. And this part specifically of the pants is going to be the gold block and the lapis block. So with the gold block, I'm going to be lining it up with the stitch that the pocket is going to be sewn to on the pants. So right around here, I'll just be keeping it right above that stitch line. And then the lapis block is going to be falling about an inch or two from the bottom of the stitch on the other side of the pant. So I'm going to be putting a pin right at the top of the oar so I know where the top is, because it can get really confusing looking at all these pixels. It kind of can go any way. So I'm going to be pressing down the sides first, and then once the sides are ironed down, I'm then going to press down the bottom and the top. And then I'm also pressing down 1/2 inch, which is kind of just indicated by this line here. When I made this pattern, I just took account for all the seam allowance that was going to be between each oar. So I left about 1 inch of space, and so I just cut them evenly down the middle. So that leaves me with 1/2 inch that I guess get to fold over. And so for each oar, I'm also going to be matching the thread color to the corresponding color of the oar. So for the lapis block, I'm specifically using these two blues for the top thread. So now that these pockets are sewn onto these front pieces, there's just one more thing that I need to add, which is this little creeper embroidery down in this corner. Yeah, so I'm going to be adding that right around here, and then once that is embroidered on, I can then sew these pieces to the big pant front pattern pieces right here. So basically, these pieces will be sandwiched right on top of these pieces right here, and then these pockets will be right on the front of the pants. So with these panels done, I'm essentially going to be taking these panels and matching them up to the front pattern of the pants. So with these lined up, I'm essentially just going to be pinning these and stitching them 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So now that this front panel is sewn to the front of the pants, what I'm going to do now is extend this stitch line right here and draw it all the way across. So that way, when we put our hands through here, it will have like a stopping point right here and we won't fall all the way through. Okay, so before I officially finish this front part, I realized that I wanted to put like a little item pocket in this pocket as well. So I'm just going to go look at the fabric and try to find this spot and match it up so that the pattern matches. I'm going to cut out a 3x4 box and I'm going to hem it all around the sides and then stitch it right around here, following sort of the same stitching pattern I've been doing on all these other pockets. So now that we have these two front panels all done on the front of the pants, I can sew the front to the back of the pants to create this side seam. But before I can do that, what I want to do first is sew on these back pockets on the butt of the pants. So on the right side we have the coal block, and on the left side we have the iron block. So I'm going to grab those pockets and sew them to the back. So for the iron ore, I'm going to be using these two threads right here. And then for the coal ore, I'm going to be using this black and this dark charcoal color. So now that we have the base of our patterns all assembled, we can start sewing up the side seam of the pants right here. So then that way we can start going into the side pockets. And yeah, so the side seam is going to be a flat felled seam. So we're sewing the wrong sides together, and then we are snipping one side and folding the other side over it. So leave all this nice stitching down the side, and it will also be a very secure seam.
So for the flat felt seam, I essentially bring two wrong sides together, and then I pin it the whole way down the length of the pants. And then after that, I sew it an inch away from the edge. So I gave myself an inch of seam allowance for this, and then I ironed it down to make it nice and clean. And then once it is ironed down, I snip the back seam allowance because I'm going to be taking the front seam allowance and tucking it inward toward the back. So I snip it down to 1/8 of an inch, and then I fold over the front, and then I pin it in place to make it easier for myself, and I iron it down flat. And then I run it through the sewing machine, and I just stitch on the edge. And then once I did that, I also did another decorative stitch in the center. Yeah, and here's how it came out.
Okay, so now that all of the side seams are sewn up, we can do all of the fun little pocket patchwork going on down the side and the bottom of the pants. So on the left side we have a redstone ore block and a little patch that is gonna have some wording on it. I'm gonna get into that later. But then on the other side, on the right side, we have a group of 3 different patch pocket things going on. So we have the emerald ore and the diamond ore, and we also have a stone block. All right, so I got my pocket things going on over here. So this side's gonna get the redstone ore roughly around there. And then this side is a little crazier. So we got the emerald ore, and then we got this stone block. And then we got the diamond ore, of course, which is towards the bottom. So I was just going to assemble them like this, sort of trying to even them out so that these are sort of like blocking up like halfway. This is sort of the vision I got for this part going on. Again, working in layers. So we're going to sew this, and then sew this right around here. But before I can sew these guys on, I need to do the embroidery right here. So I'm just gonna run that through the machine and we'll be right back. Okay, so the embroidery is done. So what I'm going to do here is pretty much do the same thing as usual, except there's not gonna be an opening at the top. So I'm just gonna sew 3/8 inch away from the edge. And then I'm just going to do the 1/8 edge stitch to sew it into place. And then once that's done, I'm gonna do the same thing with these guys, except there's gonna be an opening at the top. And basically the way I'm lining this up, I'm gonna split it in half down this seam. So we have 8 squares on each side down the middle. One thing that's bothering me is that the pattern is kind of different, like there's a different angle going on here, so that's gonna be kind of annoying. But I'm just, one of these sides will be weird and I'll just have to deal with it. All right, this side is all done. So I basically just put these pockets down and stitch them on the edge here and put in some bar tags so there's a little more sturdiness up here. Yeah, I don't know, I'm really excited about the diamond one in particular. I don't know, I really like how the threads kind of are very different from each other. So there's like a different like color texture going on that matches over here, which is very exciting to me. I don't know, I really like the detail going on in there. But regardless, this side is all set. So now we're gonna move on to this side. So this side is a little easier. We just have the redstone ore, but then we also are going to put some more patches over here. Anyway, yeah, so I'm just going to put this redstone so that it kind of falls a little below the lapis block and a little above the emerald block. So maybe around here or so. So I'm gonna line this part up right in the middle with the seam allowance right here. But I'm gonna sew that and then I'm probably gonna call it a night. So with this redstone side, I kind of thought it was just a little plain or bare compared to the other side. So I wanted to add some stuff to sort of balance it out with the other side. One idea I had was to add a patch with some text. And I had some quotes in mind. They're like Minecraft slogans. So I made a poll on my Instagram story asking all my followers what their favorite quote was, just to sort of help me figure out or gauge which one would be best. So one option was "Don't dig straight down." The other one was "Don't mind at night." And the other one was First we mine, then we craft from the Minecraft movie. So with these three quotes, I don't know, I let it sit and marinate with myself before I fully decided. Yeah, I don't know, I decided I wanted to go with "Don't dig straight down" just because I feel like it matches the theme of the pants best. And the other ones were more so memes. I don't know if I really want that vibe with these pants in particular. Not that these pants are like serious in any way, but I don't know. In my soul as like a classic Minecraft player, I just feel like that quote works best. Also, the quote "Don't mine at night," I like completely disagree with. All the mobs are out at night anyway, so like that's the best time to go mining because you can avoid them. I don't know. First we mine, then we craft. It's a funny quote. I don't know, but yeah, nah. So I mapped out a text in Illustrator that I'm going to print out on vinyl, and I'm going to iron it out onto a square rectangular patch, and then I'm going to sew it to the pants. And I also asked my friends for some thoughts or ideas that they had that I could add to these pants. One of my friends, Mish, shout out to Mish. Mish recommended adding like a lava bucket or something related to lava, which I thought was a cool nod. And another friend of mine, shout out to Kelsey, said she wanted something, or she thought that the silverfish would be a good touch. So with the text patch, I'm going to be adding some lava droplets. So like in Minecraft, when you're in the caves, if there's lava overhead, there's particles that will drop down. So I wanted to sort of add some particles or a nod to that. So here's what I came up with in Illustrator. So I was kind of just playing around with different sizes that might look good with the patch. And I also added some square particles to sort of get the droppy lava feeling. There are two different fonts. There was a classic Mojang text that was a little skinnier, and then there's the bold version, and I'm gonna go with the bold version because all the little pixels that are all separated just kind of seems like a nightmare transferring that on vinyl, so I kind of want to play it safe, and I'm just going to stick with the bold. I do like the way the skinnier version looks better, but I just think the bold is just safer. And also on the pants, you can tell that I have vinyl cutouts of the different Minecraft resources set all around the pants, next to their blocks that they're mined from. I made a little sheet just of all the little vinyl cutouts. So we have all the Minecraft resources, and we have the silverfish, and we have the lava particles that I'm going to print out all on one page. So I'm going to print them out and cut them out and then place them around and iron them. So the first thing I'm going to do is take care of the patch, and then once the patch is all done and sewn up, I'm going to do all the vinyl and so for the silverfish, I decided to make my own little motif for it. So I looked up a bunch of reference pictures, and I kind of just wanted to do from like a view of the top down of the silverfish, like a bird's eye view. And I kind of just did my best to remake the silverfish if you're looking at it overhead. So anyway, without further ado, let's get this patch done. And then once the patch is done, I'm going to cut out all of the vinyl and iron it on the pants. And then they'll be ready to be sewn.
So for this, I essentially just measured out the dimensions on Adobe Illustrator, which came out to 5 inches by 2.5 inches. So I'm cutting out a 6 by 3.5 square for the seam allowance. And so once I cut it out, I just fold down 1/2 inch. And then I basically just have the patch, and then I just get my Cricut ready.
So for this patch, we're going to be using a little help with my little friend here, the little Cricut Joy Extra. So this little guy is connected to my computer. So I have my text that I made in Adobe Illustrator, and I turned it into an SVG file and uploaded it to the Cricut application. So that's going to send all the information from there to this, and it's going to cut out the vinyl. So I'm going to be using this smart iron-on, and the difference between the smart iron-on and the regular iron-on is that the smart iron-on doesn't need a mat in order for it to be cut out. Otherwise, I would be using a mat. So I'm going to be using this black matte vinyl for the text.
So once the vinyl was all cut out from the Cricut, all I had to do was peel away the excess vinyl, and then I had to remove all of the negative space in the parts that couldn't get peeled off. So then it was essentially ready, and I just had to center it in place of the patch to the best of my ability, and then I pressed it and ironed it for about 30 seconds to a minute, just to make sure that the adhesive stuck well enough, and then the patch was ready to be sewn.
Here we are. This is how it came out. I'm so excited. I think for placement, so I have a redstone decal going over here and a silverfish going around here somewhere. So I think I kind of want to keep it in between the squares, but I think this is a good spot. Wait, yes. Okay, yeah, here we are. That's it. That's the spot. So I'm going to pin this and sew it up. So with our pockets and patches all sewn down onto the pants, it is now time for the next step, which is the vinyl cutouts. So for this step, I'm going to be using this printable heat transfer vinyl. And so I have all of my little motifs on one page, so I'm going to print it out on this, and then I just have to cut them all out and put them in their respective spots on the pants, and then iron them down, and that'll be all the vinyl.
So for the vinyl cutouts, I kind of just cut them up into smaller pieces so that they're easier to cut by themselves. And then I kind of just very carefully went around and cut everything pixel by pixel. And then for the silverfish, there were some tricky parts and some parts that like even came off of the design itself. So for those part, after going around, I kind of just went ahead and I used the X-Acto knife for more precise, more careful cuts. But yeah, here they all are together and cut out and ready to be ironed onto the pants.
So I'm going to start with the little silverfish little guy, but I'm just kind of trying to figure out the placement of what I want it to look like. And I don't know, I was thinking of putting it here to sort of balance out this area, but I do have this little redstone here, so I kind of want to separate it from that a little bit. And there's a lot of like horizontal lines, I feel like those are more accentuated here, so I kind of want to balance it out by making him sort of vertical. And I think I want to put it around here so it's a little separated from everything else and it's his own little thing. And so yeah, I think that works pretty good. And he has like these little dark eyes, so I kind of want to put him on a lighter shade so that it comes out more, because when he's over here you can't really see his eyes and I feel it kind of throws it off. But if I put him here, I think it works okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, you guys, the vinyl is all done. So next we can finally finish up sewing the rest of the pants. So what we're going to do now is sew the center back seam and then the front seam, and then so that will also include the fly. And then after that, we're going to sew up the inseam of the pants. So this big seam right here. And then we just have to do the waistband and the hem. So let's do it.
Here I am starting on the center back of the pants, and I'm just pinning the right sides together on the back and then pinning it and sewing it with 1/2 inch of seam allowance. And then from there I move to the ironing board and I press it flat to make the seam nice and crisp and clean. And then from there I am working on the fly, which is just a lot of fun work. So I'm just sewing in the zipper and doing all that stitching. And then I also am doing the top stitching to sew the fly down as well. And for this part I wanted to like follow like a right angle to sort of mimic the block texture on the pants and like sort of following that like Minecraft square pixel motif. So I tried my best to do it in a straight line, but I don't know. But anyway, from there I am doing the inseam. So I start pinning from the very center and then I work my way down out towards the hem. And then I start from one hem and I start stitching all the way around, and I do a couple back tacks in the crotch to keep it nice and sturdy because that's the most vulnerable area, arguably. So yeah, and then from there I just finish the inseam, and here's how it turned out.
So now that the inseam of the pants are all sewn up, we can now move on to the waistband. So essentially your waistband pattern, when I pattern the pants at least, it's just an extension of the pants. So there is essentially this natural curve that happens with the waistband so that it can wrap around your body nicely. But because this fabric, the grid pixelated texture I'm using, there's some weirdness that can happen with the pattern of the fabric. So because these are cut out so that the pixels are straight following the grain line, that can lead to some weirdness around the curve, which causes the pattern to become diagonal. So I would like to avoid that with these pants because I don't like how that looks. So instead of using this fitted waistband pattern, I'm going to do something different. So I'm going to measure the top of the pants, and I'm going to get the length around the top, and then I'm going to use that measurement to cut out a rectangle, and I'll use that instead as the waistband. So with a fitted pair of pants, I wouldn't recommend doing that because you'll lose the fit of the pattern, and they'll essentially be a little loose at the top. But to avoid that weirdness, you can also put in an elastic, or you can also put in like a tie, so that will essentially like gather up the waistband and fit it to your body that way. So that's the approach that I'm going to take.
So here I'm measuring the waistline of the pants at the top, and I got 41.5 inches, even though I'm like, you know, probably like a 34 waist. But I also have to account for the fly and all that good stuff. So I kind of just measured it out on the fabric, and so I'm cutting out a 3-inch band. Because I want the waistband to be 2 inches, I'm leaving 1/2 inch of seam allowance at the top, bottom, and sides. And then I sew on the inner facing because I'm going to be putting a buttonhole as well as some buttonholes on the inside of the waist for the ties. So I'm sewing here all around the waistband from the side to the top, and then I cut the corners, and I'm cutting these corners to release the fabric so that when we flip it, it'll be a lot cleaner. So I'm ironing it down to make it crisp as usual, and so after we iron the waistband, I am then sewing it to the front of the pants, and I'm pinning it the whole way around. I did have to stretch the waistband a little bit for some ease. I think I cut them a little too short, so I'm kind of just stretching the waistband while trying to keep the pants themselves flat, but I just sew all the way around. And then after that, it is time for the buttonholes on the inside of the pants so that I can put the tie in. So I just marked where I wanted them to go on the waistband, and then I made the marks, and I measured out the buttonhole to be 1 inch. So I just put in the buttonhole, and here's how it turned out. So once the buttonhole was in place, I then fold in the seam allowance on the inside of the pants and tuck it inward towards the pants, and then I pin it down, and this way we're going to encase the waistband together and close it off and make it nice and clean. So I'm just stitching along the edge of the waistband here all the way around, and then the waistband is done. And then from here it's time for the belt loops. So I'm just cutting one long continuous strip, and I think I made it about 1 inch. I wanted the belt loops to be bulky to match the pixels on the pants. so that they're all the belt loops would each be like the width of the pixels themselves. So I just made one long continuous strip and just sewed it and cut it down to the length of the belt loops I wanted, which was 3.5 inches, I believe, including the seam allowance. So then from there, I am just sewing in the belt loops, and I sew it to the top edge, and then I fold it down. I sew up exactly in the right spot where I sewed it to the pants. I don't know if that made any sense. Then I fold it down and I do 2 stitches, and here's how all the belt loops look together. And then after that, I did the button and the buttonhole on the front. And then after that, I also sewed another long continuous strip for the actual tie that I'm going to be putting into the pants. So I put a safety pin and then I just feed it through the channel of the belt loop. So I kind of just pull the safety pin and try to gather the fabric within the waistband. And then this way, when it's on, and I'm able to tie the tie together, it will cinch up the waistband and fit it to my body. And then from there, all I have to do is the hem. So I just kind of mark where I want my hemline to be, which I try to mark it along the grain of the pixels. And I wanted the hem to be 1 inch up. So I marked 1 inch and 1/2 inch, and then I folded each upward into the pant, and I just sewed along the edge to give myself a nice hemline. And just like that, the pants are done. Alright, you guys, that is going to be all for today's video. This is like my longest video yet. There was a lot that went into these pants. I hope this video was informative, and I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for making it this far. I may or may not be putting these in a fashion show, so I might want to make a matching top. I probably won't make a YouTube video for it, but probably some TikToks or some short form content. I really want to be more active on my accounts. I want to make a lot more this year, and I have so much ideas in my brain, and with the Mario Galaxy movie coming up soon, I really want to make some stuff for that. Here are my socials. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, here on YouTube, obviously. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!